MoonDrop have been gaining quite a lot of popularity over the last year or two, perhaps most noticeably when they released the IEMs like the Canas Pro. Since then, practically every IEM from MoonDrop has been hyped for their sound quality, especially with regards to how closely they seem to stick to the Harman response curve. Well, recently they released the Starfield, but can it live up to the expectations and continue the trend that we've seen thus far? The overall design and profile of the Starfield seems very similar to that of the Canas Pro and KXXS, even down to the recessed 2-pin connectors. The build quality of the housing is of pretty good quality, and it makes the Starfield look and feel more premium than what the retail price of $109 might suggest. The only thing I'm a bit disappointed about with regards to the build is that the seam for the faceplate is very obvious, as opposed to the seamless design that we've seen on other IEMs, such as FiO's FA1 and numerous other multi-BA and hybrid driver IEMs from smaller Chinese manufacturers. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the Starfield's design is the color scheme, as it features this really intriguing pearlescent finish which transitions between various shades of green, blue and purple. The cable also features a similar type of color scheme, although the effect of the color is not as prominent as that of the driver housing. Whilst we're talking about the cable, this one feels a bit generic. Yes, it's got some braiding and it does feel relatively soft, but it also feels pretty much like every other cable that comes with affordable IEMs. It's on the thinner side, and the 3.5mm connector housing is just plain old translucent molded plastic. It does the job, but it doesn't seem to really match that impression of something a bit more special that you get with the IEM housings. Unfortunately, the Starfield does have one particular issue in common with practically all affordable Chinese IEMs that I've encountered, and that has to do with the fit. If you've been messing around with IEMs for a little while, then you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about here, and that is that so many Chinese IEMs tend to have a very shallow fit in the ear. In this case, the Starfield is no different, and it's my single biggest complaint about it. Whilst I can easily get it into my ear and it remains comfortable no matter how long I use it, it just doesn't feel very secure. The result of this is that after a few minutes I find myself having to readjust it to get a proper seal again. This is a real shame because, as with any IEMs, getting a proper seal is imperative to getting the best sound quality, and boy does the Starfield sound good when you can get the seal just right. If we take a look at the response graph, we'll notice that the Starfield has a remarkably smooth signature overall, which tends to lean ever so slightly towards having a slightly elevated bass response. I should mention here that the graph might look a little bit different to other graphs that you might have seen of the Starfield, and that's because the measurement rig that I use is the Mini DSP ears, and I've applied the in-ear diffuse field correction graph. My personal impression of the Starfield signature seems to line up with the measurements I'm getting. It has just enough bass to keep things interesting, but it won't please bass heads, not even close. It's certainly not as flat as something like Etymotic's ER2 SE, but nowhere near the V-shaped signature that so many affordable IEMs tend to offer. In fact, how I'd describe the Starfield signature is simply a breath of fresh air. By that I mean that it's somewhat crazy to think that you can get this level of refinement in the signature for this price. Heck, a year or maybe two ago, you would have to shell out considerably more than just $109 to get this level of sound quality. Equally impressive is the detail retrieval in the highs, which presents enough sparkle to make things sound very clear and engaging, but without ever coming across as forced. Vocals tend to seem just ever so slightly recessed with reference to the bass, but I would still call it very well balanced. With regards to the overall value of the Starfield, I think the most obvious comparison to make would be to the T4. As far as I'm concerned anyway, the price tag is the only real similarity between the T4 and the Starfield, because with reference to everything else such as the design, the build quality and the sound signature, I think the Starfield is a considerably better product and thus offers a great deal more value. If we compare the frequency response graphs for the Starfield and the T4, we can see that the Starfield remains just a bit more balanced, especially when we consider that spike around 6 kHz on the T4. As noted in my review of the T4, this treble spike can make the T4 just seem a bit too bright at times, and it was really the only obvious fault that I could find with its sound character. However, if you want to really hear the music as it was created, then a flatter signature really is the only way to go. And this is where the beauty of the Starfield comes in. No, the Starfield might not offer a reference signature like the ER2 SE does, but the very tasteful coloration it provides is done extremely well, and I think it is a really good compromise which will suit a lot more people. So I think the Starfield is going to be one of those IEMs that we really are going to have to keep an eye on, because I honestly can see this becoming exceptionally popular. Unless something better comes along very shortly, these IEMs could easily serve as a great little benchmark as to the type of build, design, and sound quality that can be achieved for just a little more than $100. Personally, I would still spend a little extra on one of the ER2 models, probably the ER2XR, but if I only had enough for the Starfield, I would wholeheartedly pick it over anything else in this price region right now. So thanks for taking the time to watch this review. If you've liked it, do go ahead and hit that like button and do consider subscribing. That's all from me for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.